Hey everyone, welcome back to Gear Glazers. I'm Kyle, and this is Mike, aka the Mikester. And today we're starting a brand new series titled Hype Beast. And appropriately, we're talking about the C8 Corvette. We're going to be taking a look at the generation. We're going to be taking a look at the fact that it's now almost over, if you can believe that. We're coming into the C9 here. Probably in a couple years. We've had the base C8, the Z06, the E-Ray, the ZR1, and we're really answering the question, is the C8 worth the hype?
The C8? The everyman's exotic? the mainstream mid-engine? The budget banger itself? The C8 Corvette Stingray?
I've heard some people say the poor man's Ferrari.
The poor man's Ferrari. Yeah, dude, I think it's a great study in like a car that wildly succeeded, and how does that impact the car market, or how does that impact car culture in general, like as we see it happening day by day?
Yeah, so obviously the car was very successful. All it takes is eyes to be able to go down the road and see 50 of them. Like, you know that.
I'm not too good at math, but
yeah. and we can get to that, but I did want to touch on, like, when this car came out, let's all remember this. Like, now if you see a C8, car people at least are like, oh man, it's a C8, you know? But when it came out, it was like, this is the coolest thing of all time. C8's going mid-engine. Like, it had a lot of hype. This car came out during COVID. 2020 was the first year. So that meant you had a limited number of these things rolling off the assembly line, and a ton of people with cash who wanted one. And you just saw prices just going astronomical, dealers charging insane markups for like a while after this car came out. And so this car is perfect to start this series with, because like, I can't think of a more hyped car than the C8 Corvette when it came out.
It's true. Dude, so much of like people's negative feelings about this car comes from the state of the economy and just the capitalism surrounding how dealerships treated this car's launch.
Yeah.
Like, this thing didn't get the luxury of coming out and being able to be measured against its actual MSRP. This thing
it's true.
pimped out in every dealership across America. You couldn't get a base model one. It had to have every bell and whistle just to drive that price all the way up. Which, like, the craziest example of that is on the Z06, Z07 package with the Cup 2R tires, which we just found out are an absolute scam.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we can talk about the Z06. Obviously, like, I'll say it again, at this point you know this already, but I own a C8 Z06, which means that I'm biased. I mean, maybe that's not obvious. Maybe you just love the Z06. You don't love the base C8. I love the base C8.
The base C8 is one of the best values that has ever existed in cars.
That's what I'm trying to say. People are trying to ignore that.
Yeah.
They're trying to gaslight you into thinking that that's not the case. I don't care what you think about this car. The value is insane.
By any measure of what you care about in cars, I don't care if you think it's pretty. I don't care if you want something that goes fast. I don't care if you want something that's moddable. This is the best car that's been released in the last 20 years for that. However, what is really interesting about this is, because of that, and because of Chevy's ability to meet that demand and ride that wave so successfully,
There's too many.
This thing is everywhere. Similar to a beautiful painting that can't be viewed because of the masses crowded around it in a museum. Its beauty at this point is annoying to me.
I understand that. An interesting phenomena that happens in the car world, if you make a car that is really that good and you can actually meet demand appropriately, car enthusiasts will actually start hating on it.
Yeah.
Because there's too many of them on the road, and rarity is important to car enthusiasts. But I did want to mention, right, like, when the FT1 concept came out for the Supra, and Toyota was like, we're going to make a sports car that is less money than a fully loaded Prius, and it's gonna set the auto world on fire. They failed at that objective, I think. Supra is a dope car, but they failed at that mission. The sales numbers show that I'm not lying. This is what that was supposed to be. Like, GM successfully did that with this Corvette. Corvette has always been an older demographic of buyer. They completely flipped that upside down with the C8. Everybody loves this thing. Old people, 16-year-olds, everyone loves this car.
That's an interesting thing. Like, who do you think bought this?
Everybody.
Everybody, like, across all demographics?
It's important to note that, again, the car is still $60,000 base. I think now at this point, 2024, it's probably a few $1,000s over that, because every year they've raised it a little bit.
Sure.
But I mean, that's not nothing. It's not Honda Civic money. It's not used car for $5,000 money. It's still expensive. So you're still going to get an older demographic. But I know for a fact that the demographic who's bought this has lowered significantly compared to like the C7 Corvette, for example. And let's also talk about the used market. Who's buying these things on the used market? Lots of young people. Like, you were just not seeing that at such a scale with the previous generations of Corvette.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense, especially on the used market. I mean, I think because of the current state of the economy, it's tough to get into a car that starts at 70, and that's what it is now. I think it's like 69, 90, whatever, you know, 69, 98. I think it's tough to get into that, but especially on the used market, and since there's so many of them, that used market is starting to actually come down to like a realistic price. The used car market is still crazy for rare cars, but for a car like this, you actually see meaningful difference. This, more than any other Corvette in the past, is on the hit list for like somebody like my age. Like anybody my age and younger, like 20 something, you know, maybe even fresh out of college, just got your first big boy job. Like, this is somehow a car that you're looking at, whereas like Corvette was never supposed to be that.
It wasn't attainable.
Yeah.
First of all, I just want to talk about, we chose the Zeus Bronze, which has been discontinued. I know you were a big fan of that color.
Yeah.
This like brown.
Is this Zeus Bronze? I thought it was called Caffeine.
This is, I guess, caffeine.
Okay.
But Zeus Bronze was a slightly different shade of the same color.
Yeah.
And they just changed the name and yeah.
I've never seen the bronze one in person, but when we saw the caffeine one in person at the Z06 event in North Central Florida, right when the Z06 was coming out, I thought it was the most beautiful color on an American car I'd ever seen.
I mean, it was very polarizing. It did absolutely terrible in sales, and so they discontinued it. I'm a big fan of these colors. Like, okay, let's think of it this way. If you're already gonna drive a car where there's a billion of them on the road, why would you not want to drive that in a color scheme that is very rare?
Yeah.
And so I took the same approach. I went with the cacti green on my Z06, and then, funny enough, the cacti green sold nearly as bad as this brown did, and so they discontinued it after a year, which I'm super happy about. I have a rare car color that is discontinued, so no one can order it again. Like, I feel like that's ideal.
Yeah. I don't think they like got too adventurous with the car colors here. I've been seeing some crazy stuff like pink and purple has been making a comeback, which are like some of the historically least used colors. They didn't go that crazy on this. Well,
2025, you got Hysteria Purple.
Hysteria Purple. I haven't seen that. Can we pull up a picture of that?
I can show you. Like a dark purple.
Oh, and this is the color they're shopping around the E-Ray in.
Well, this is the color that they were shopping around the ZR1 in. Okay. So the ZR1, they were shopping it in their two new colors. I think it's the ZTK package, whatever their, top trim is. They were shopping that in the new yellow, which is less highlighter yellow, less neon yellow, and more like taxi cab, old school Corvette C6 yellow. And then the non-ZTK package, or whatever that top trim is, they were shopping in the purple.
I remember that duo in the ZR1 release. Well, yeah, dude, I think the colors were good. I think they suited the car well, but like that wasn't what made this car special. Realistically, it was the drivetrain, right?
The C8 was a hard pivot and transition from a front engine layout to a mid-engine layout. They said that they had reached pretty much the pinnacle of engineering of what they could do with the car and front engine, and I believe them after what they've been able to do with this. So they literally didn't change any. Let's not talk about new engine. Like, they literally just took the engine and they moved it from the front to the middle of the car.
It was incredibly brave. I'm sure they put I know that they were talking about doing a mid-engine Corvette for like 20 years, so I'm sure they did all their focus groups to make sure that this was going to be something that customers would actually want. But even so, like, as the company releasing Corvette, which has so much just like American heritage behind it, like making that drastic of a switch, and not even taking into account the technical difficulties that went along with that, like taking the LS engine that has been around for like 50 years or whatever and sticking in the back of the car. Just like, in the eyes of the American consumer, like, would they want to sit in a mid-engine car? Does that feel too European to them?
Definitely not. And I think, as the market proved, something about mid-engine just screams supercar. Like, it feels like a supercar. It looks like a supercar. It's distinct. If you look at a base C8, it looks very different from a CS7, like a traditional muscle car looking type of car. Like, it looks more like a European sports car because they're often mid-engine. And like, I think people are huge fans of that.
Apparently, like, I would have thought that people would have wanted, especially in an era like this where there's this like callback to like classic manhood or whatever, like in terms of like how companies have been marketing to men. I would have thought it looked more like a Mustang or more like a Challenger, more like a Camaro.
So you're a C7 fan.
I love the C7.
Yeah, which is interesting. I prefer the C8. You prefer the C7. And so, it does go to show you, like, there is a preference. And some people weren't a huge fan of this. Let's talk about 0 to 60 time real quick. I don't want to harp on it. But 2.9 out of this car, and you're going to get a bunch of people who are going to be like, it's only whatever. Yeah. Okay? We're using the times that companies put out. I'm sorry. Deal with it. 2.9, that's insane. To be able to get that level of performance in a car that was 60 grand is absolutely crazy.
You're right. That's a big thing that made the market like okay with this being such a drastic difference in the Corvette is like the performance spoke for itself. Like that's, I think, one of the biggest challenges that Porsche has been facing with the 911 in the rear platform. Every engineer that I've ever seen talk about the 911 is like, I don't understand why they haven't pushed that thing mid. Like every single company has pretty much come to the conclusion that mid-engine is the best format for making a performance car.
There's a certain point in horsepower where you need weight over the rear wheels. You just need weight so you can put power down. It's actually so simple.
Yeah. They decided, I mean, the Chevy engineers are brilliant, not only because they decided that that was necessary here, but they found a way to use the LS engine and make people feel like, you know, this thing still drives like a Corvette. Like it still has an LS. It's still like low-end torquey. Like you're not taking that away from the Corvette buyer. You're just making it way, way better. And making it mid-engine and taking away a lot of like the storage space, like the golf club thing that the Corvette owners like to talk about, and taking away the manual transmission was a lot to stomach.
Yeah, the manual transmission was tough, but let's be honest, man, like the manual transmission is dead. It's fun.
Yeah.
But from a performance perspective, it just cannot keep up with a modern double clutch.
That's what I'm saying. In the retrospective, I think what we're realizing is that this car killed all of the classic Corvette like things that the line was like hanging on to, and it did them while still maintaining success by just being that good. That's the only way it could have pulled that off.
Yeah. To get the Z51 package on the coupe, you're paying 71, and then let's just go fully loaded 3LT Z51, you're paying 90 grand, right? That's worth talking about. The sheer amount of people that did not buy this car in 1LT. The 1LT it's tough.
Yeah.
That's a tough configuration to get. The 2LT is doable. It comes with all the electronics. It comes with some more interior options. The 3LT really is just the interior. It's like you can get the fully dipped natural tan that I have if you do the 3LT, but like you can get half tan, half black.
Yeah.
And you can get the 2LT. You don't need the 3LT for that. But no one really bought this thing base, and I think it's bringing up an interesting trend in cars today where like manufacturers are hitting you with a really, really low price knowing that you're not actually going to buy it for that price. You're going to get the options that are pretty much must-haves.
It's true.
Like you're paying 70 grand for a car, you need certain key features. No camera? Like no camera on the car for 70 G's is crazy. RAV4 has cameras.
Like no backup camera? Or?
No cameras, bro.
But how do you back up if you don't have a backup camera? This thing has no rear window.
It doesn't have cameras.
Yikes. I get it. Like they're just selling something, like it's just normal price tiering stuff. Like they're selling something that you don't actually want just so they can have a good introductory price. Everybody does it.
Yeah. Anyone know of a kit to install a similar camera to the rear driving camera that comes in a 2 or 3LT package? It's absolutely crazy.
What else do you think is important to talk about in like the comparisons and the understanding how this car and the whole line, now that it's kind of reaching its end, like impacted car culture, like, and got us to where we are today?
I mean, look, you can have a whole conversation on what the E-Ray did, what the Z06 did, what the ZR1 has done, like already 233 miles an hour. Like it's just
233 is crazy.
Crazy. But I think as amazing as the lineup is today, it's stolen some of the thunder, some of the magic from the base car.
Yeah.
Like the base car is incredible in its own right. But to answer your question, like what has it done for car culture today? I think it's completely changed it. I think it's completely revolutionized it. I think it's put exotic manufacturers on notice that they're going to have to stop bringing their sloppy seconds to the market and expecting us to buy it.
It's true.
Like the fact that I can get this car for 70, I can get a Z06 for just over 100. What's the point?
Yeah.
Like I need something better, which I think is great. Like ultimately forcing manufacturers to do something better is just good for all of us.
Like obviously it's a supercar killer. Obviously it doesn't make any sense to buy an entry-level Ferrari Roma or something like that when you can get a Z06 that is going to absolutely murder it. If you're somebody that cares about performance.
Yeah. If you care about the badge, then you're never going to be happy to get the badge. But if you don't care about the badge, it murders in every way.
One of my gripes with this car is like how people universally glazed it for its performance, but the performance that they were glazing is track-based performance, and nobody is taking a C8 Corvette base model to the track.
Dude, people are. Let's just say people actually are. Like, but I get what you're saying. Like, you're not trying to put up the most competitive numbers.
No, yeah.
In the base C8.
When you start talking about like comparatively performant cars in the same price range, you obviously have the M2 or to a certain degree, the Ford Mustang, like the Shelby, is right up there. But like, let's not talk about Mustangs. They have their own problems.
It's a car that's cheap and fun relatively.
Yeah.
To put on the track, and so people do it. But it's not. You're not setting lap times that your friends are going to be like, holy crap. You know?
Right. If you care about setting lap times, if you're one of the few people that actually hits the track like that, C8 Corvette, there's no better car in the price range. But on a road, dude, I think there's a case, like, if you don't want a Corvette, if you don't want something this, like, that has the drawbacks of this, like with the poor vision and like cramped like cargo areas, like what do you think about an M2? Like, now that we've let those generations play out and kind of seen like how everybody, you know, reacts to the driving experience and how the performance numbers like shook out, like, would you take an M2 over a base C8?
I wouldn't. And I like the M2, but again, I just think the C8 is more value. Everything from the drivetrain to the power that it puts down to the performance to the interior, like, I just don't know how you can argue with this value, and I'm honestly just a huge fan of the car. I like high horsepower, high torquey cars, and the C8 just does that naturally aspirated. I love that.
I know, like, it's definitely a fun driver's car. It's definitely like rear-wheel drive and it has a lot of American muscle appeal, but I will say there's something more refined about the like M2's driving experience, and also just like having that turbocharged straight six motor and the way that revs and being a little bit like higher in the power and being a little smoother on the rev versus like the LT, which is like a little like lower end. It's a little grittier. It's a little torquier.
For sure.
So I think in retrospect, like, while this car is like insane and the performance numbers blew everything out of the water, in my mind, this is right there with an M2.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, the performance, I think, speaks for itself on this car, like we said, but also let's consider something like convertible. My car's convertible. I drive it legitimately. Anyone that knows me knows this is true. I drive it 99% of the time with the top down.
True.
Like, it changes the entire driving experience. It's like a Miata. Like, it like, you feel like you're part of it. And M2 doesn't come in convertible.
No, it doesn't come in convertible, but I'm looking at like the horsepower numbers. Like, this put, what was it, 490?
495 is with the Z51 package.
Okay, okay. And the M2 puts up 473. Like, dude, it's right there.
That is actually pretty close.
It's right there.
That's honestly closer than I thought.
And I love that motor, dude.
That's closer than I thought.
I love the LT motor, but personally, I like to drive like straight sixes more than I like to drive like American V8s.
This car has so much more presence though than an M2.
Oh yeah, it has more presence for sure. It's a more understated driving experience for sure. In all respects.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't think it's like as untouchable as like the track performance numbers say, because yeah, you put this thing on a track, it beat everything in its price range like by a mile. But on the street, I think if you want something different, I think you can get that and not feel like you're losing out so much on value as much as the internet believes.
I get what you're saying. I do. Also, really quick, the front trunk is a crazy sensation if you've never had a mid-engine car. It's like it's such a flex. You go to the grocery store, you get your groceries, you go to the front trunk, you put them in, like, yeah, I don't know. Dude. Maybe that's stupid, but it feels cool. Like,
you put the produce in the front trunk, you put the rotisserie chicken in the back.
Yeah. The honestly, back of this car, the Z06, I don't know how bad the base C8 is, but the Z06 just actually is an oven. It fries anything you put in the trunk. Like, well, first of all, those black rims, I hate those rims.
Yeah,
I absolutely despise those rims.
Black rims are out. We called it like a year ago. Black rims are done.
They're done. But look at this interior. Like, some people don't like the fighter jet thing on the side, but like, dude, for this price, you're getting into something that doesn't look like a Kia.
Yeah.
Like, it looks like a sports car.
It's driver focused in a way that I haven't seen in sports cars outside of like exotics since like the 90s.
Dude, straight up.
Because at a certain, like, sports cars used to be like, you had like a control panel. Like, even the Mustangs, if you take a look at an SN95 Mustang from like the 90s and the early 2000s, you're in a cockpit and your passengers just kind of tossed in. Supras, Nissans, like, all of them had this cockpit experience. And then at some point in the mid 2000s, we evened out the dashboard and just stuck a big screen in it and had a center console that took that away, and it took away the immersion from the driver, and this car brought it back in a big way.
Yeah, but let's talk about the power plant, man. Like, the engine is dope. It's all reliable back here.
One thing I have to say about this, especially this drivetrain in the retrospective and like what this generation of Corvette is going to mean to like car culture, how many of these things sold?
We're going to get to that. But
and whatever.
Let's say 20,000.
An absurd number of these things sold. And I'm willing to wager a good number of them got crashed. And those engines ended up, those front end collisions, mind you, left us with some very handsome looking engines that are unoccupied, that creates an opportunity for classic car enthusiasts that has not existed in a long time.
I agree. It's like, I think the seats in this car are also sick. The competition seats, like it just feels like a high-end sports car, and you're not paying that much money for it. Like, this is not hype. It's not hype. They said they were going to deliver on performance, on looks, on feel, on interior, and they delivered on all of them.
100%.
I just think that that's kind of crazy, and because there's so many of these things, that gets underplayed.
Yeah. It's hard to take a look at the C8 and like give it the credit for everything that it did well, because it just won so hard. Like this thing came out and they literally discontinued the Supra.
You want to be hyping the underdog.
Yeah.
And this is not an underdog. This is a big, braggadocious, annoying winner.
Yeah. Before launch, it was. Before launch, it was like, oh my God, like there's whispers, like it's rear engine. They took away the manual, like nobody knows. And then it came out and it crushed it, and it had its moment of glory. Now, I don't want to hear any nice things about the C8.
Yeah. Let's talk about that moment of glory.
Yeah.
20,000 of these cars sold in 2020. 26,000 sold in 2021. 25,000 sold in 2022. 46,000 sold in 2023. Now, I know that you're just hearing big numbers and you're like, I have no idea what that means. Let's put this in perspective. The Porsche 911, benchmark for sports cars, sold 8,000 units in 2020. Sold 10,000 units in 2021, 10,000 units in 2022, 11,000 units in 2023. It's beating it by 2.5x, and in 2023, it beat it by 4x. Now, I know you're thinking, Porsche 911, super popular sports car. I see them all over. My dentist has one. Okay. Let's talk about the Jaguar F-Type. 1,700 units sold in 2020. 2,000 units sold in 2021. 683 singular vehicles sold in 2022. 363 F-Types sold in 2023. Someone do the math on that for me. 46,000 compared to 363.
Yeah.
The F-Type was a decimal point. It was an afterthought compared to the C8 sales. Like, it's just mind-boggling how well this car sold.
And Jag is like literally like falling apart as a company. Like, didn't they discontinue production for like an entire calendar year? Like,
I don't know about that.
No, dude, this thing is putting the hurting on every other car that it like outshined.
Yeah.
Like in a big way. The only sports cars in this range that survived, I think, are BMW and Mercedes, just because they're that good and they're that different.
And again, like, I urge all the enthusiasts who are big C8 haters just to bear with me for a moment. And think about how when the Mustang did what it did and just absolutely destroyed the pony race, it just demolished the Camaro. Charger and Challenger had their own lane, but like they're not, come on. Like, we know the Mustang won that race in terms of like performance for the money.
Hard.
We didn't have anybody playing in this space, and this is all the space that like we aspired as kids. Like, the GTR was a little bit too expensive for what it had. Like, there really was no, the Dodge Viper was discontinued. Like, there really was no big winner here. And they literally dropped a Mustang in the $60,000, $70,000 range. It's crazy.
This thing is just a nail in the coffin for a lot of different cars. In a beautiful way. Like, you know, like in a burn the forest so new growth happens kind of way, I hope.
Not only did they hit the mark for the base C8, which is a big deal and super important, they could have botched the Z06. They could have botched the ZR1. They hit every single variant on the, it's just crazy.
It was hit after hit.
Everywhere this car competes, it wins.
Yeah.
It's better in every way. It's worth the money in every way. Like, people were like, oh, well, it's not a bona fide supercar. Okay, let's change the suspension. Let's give it a flat plane, high revving. Like, they just hit at every single place in the market. It's insane.
Yeah. As we're wrapping up the retrospective and being like, okay, like towards the end of the run, like this is what they did. They changed the game. What do you think that Chevy can do to top themselves for the next gen? Like, how's the C9 Corvette gonna carry on the success?
So, I think they've got to do what the Charger did. The Charger was a massive success when it came out, and they just made it a little bit better.
That's what I was gonna say.
They didn't try to reinvent the wheel. They just made it a little bit better. Same thing with like a Bronco or a Wrangler. When you have that kind of a success on your hands, just make it a little bit better. Update all the features for me, and make it competitive with what's coming out right now, and that's it, man. Like, I don't want you to reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna see, and I think it's gonna do well. It's not gonna do as well as the C8. It's just gonna do like a lot of people who had C8s are gonna upgrade to it. now that the C8 market has sort of opened up to include a lot more people. It's going to have a lot of sales. I don't think it's going to blow up the car scene like this did. But I don't think that it's going to get outshined, because I think that the C8 blew open a hole in the car market so big that it's going to take a while to fill. Like companies like Toyota and BMW and Mercedes have to go back to the drawing board in a big way, and it's going to take them some time.
Yeah, companies like Ferrari, Lamborghini, and McLaren. I know that people are like, there's no way. That's a completely different buyer. No. There are some buyers who are never going to drive a Chevy.
Yeah.
There are a lot of buyers who will, and who have bought Z06s instead of other supercars.
Yeah.
Like, they pulled it off. They really did take a bite out of the market share of a lot of these companies, especially Porsche.
For sure.
Let's do a glaze score, man.
Yeah, man, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a little minute. Let's give it a glaze.
Yeah. All right, let's run through it. What you got first?
Performance.
I put a 7 for the base C8. I think it's in line with the scores that I've given other cars in the same range.
I put an 8. That's probably a little bit of glaze in there.
Some glaze.
A little bit of glaze. But again, like, 0 to 60 times, track times, like, I think that the car is pretty well performing. It outperforms an M3, which I gave a 7.
Yeah.
So, like, people are going to kill me for that. Like, what do you mean by out? That 0 to 60 time has to be on... Whatever.
That's what I'm saying. I'm taking that in retrospect, because I believe...
You're taking driving experience.
I'm taking driving experience.
That's so subjective. You just say that about whatever you want. Like,
no, but it's like you can't have everything based off track times. Like, it at a certain point, you have to realize that after you've seen enough of these on the road, it's not going to be in the everyman's hand that much crazier of a driving experience than an M2 or an M3. Like, even though it outshines them on the track by
I agree.
10%.
I agree.
Some crazy number.
I agree. I'm putting my glaze in there.
So I gave it the same score that I would give an M2 or an M3 for sure.
Design,
8. Like, and here's the thing, I didn't feel good about this, because this is, again, it's a
I gave it an 8 also.
Every dude in Miami who drives one of these looks the same to me. It's a beautiful car. They absolutely killed it with the design, but like, I just see so many of them that it upsets me. But bias aside, it's not the Michael score. It's the Glaze score. It's an 8.
I agree. Honestly, I think that's well said. 8. Value
10.
Yeah, I gave it a 9. I don't even know what a 10 is. Really.
This is a 10. Like, what? Yeah. I haven't given other cars 10 because this is the 10.
Nah.
Every time
you actually said nothing. I said it to you, and then you said nothing, and you convinced me. This is a 10.
I didn't even say hear me out. You're hearing me out.
You didn't say anything. You convinced me immediately.
Oh, man.
Yeah, no, you're right. I can't think of a car that's better value.
Yeah, every time we do a glaze score and I don't give a car a 10, it's because this car has the 10 spot.
I agree. Okay, perception.
5. That's where I docked it. That's where I had to take it out behind the barn.
Do you think that this has higher or lower street cred, perception, than an M3?
Lower.
Dang, really?
Dude, even if you got a base model M3 and you got one of these that somehow you spec'd up to cost as much as a base model M3, so like 85, 90 grand or whatever it is.
How much is a base model M3?
Like 83 or something. Wow. If you took those two same cars at the same price point, I think that M3 is so much higher regarded in terms of perception. Okay,
what about people that are not car people? Because they're really... So I gave it a 7. And that's why I did it, because people that are not car people, that don't know anything, they don't know that an M3 is not a 330i.
No, yeah, that's
this thing is clearly not that.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, this is clearly a super nice sports car. Like, they don't know the difference.
That's a good point. This gets the market that's like, nice car, man. What is that, Ferrari?
Yeah. Exactly. It looks like Ferraris. Like, they don't know the difference between them. And so you definitely get perception from people that are not car people. A car person is definitely going to just hate on you. But like, yeah, the rest of the public is like, is this a McLaren?
It's true, yeah.
I was in the car with Zach, our friend that has a base C8. Mm-hmm. And we parked outside this building, and this guy walked up and he was like, oh, is that the new McLaren? It's just like, he doesn't know. But like, the point is, that's what people on the street are thinking. Like, they don't know the difference.
Yeah. Maybe I'm being cynical with the 5. I just had to dock it somewhere. I can't give this thing like the craziest score of all time.
It deserves it. But yeah, with that said, this is the base C8. We'll definitely do a video on the Z06. We'll definitely do a video on the ZR1. We'll get to that. But I don't even want to talk about that much, because this thing deserves its own flowers.
Yep. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for watching.